Hello everybody and welcome to another hair-raising exciting episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios, televisions, stereos, all kinds of other stuff that run on warm vacuum tubes. Speaking of warm, I'm turning into a big weenie. Went from like 80 degrees to 64, which feels freezing for some reason because, I don't know, whatever. I've got a fire going. And so I am going to do a radio in reverse. This is an RCA portable. Let's see what the model number is here. Model number BX-57. It's a AC/battery powered set. And it looks like that... What is the battery power? Doesn't say the battery voltage, but anyway, it doesn't matter. They don't make those batteries anymore. It's probably like a 90 volt battery for B plus, and then there's probably a chunk of the battery that's for the filament. Either way, this is already a heavy set, and you imagine like this entire cavity here would be filled with a battery as well. Now, as far as condition goes, it seems to actually want to work, but it's not. As in, like, I definitely am getting static, and I'm getting audio, but no reception. So probably one of the IF or RF tubes is bad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use plastic polish, Novus number 2, which is my favorite, to polish the case up. Because what else am I going to do? My wife is on vacation somewhere in Seattle and visiting her friend up there. So I'm going to sit here and polish away. And by the way, for all my British friends, I'm drinking a British beer tonight. It's a Newcastle Brown Ale. It's funny because it actually says it's made in Petaluma, California by Lagunitas. But anyway, I have a British-American friend who came over with some other radio guys last night, and he brought a six-pack of that, and I hadn't had this beer in years. So it's quite nice. It's appropriate. Toasty brown beer in front of the fire. Well, I succeeded in polishing the radio. It's looking a lot better, even though the light's pretty bad. We'll see it a little bit maybe tomorrow when I go back into the shop. In the meantime, my Maine Coon cat decided to jump up on my lap, and he's pretty freaking heavy. Not sure if you guys are familiar with this breed, but they're quite large. And anyway, tomorrow we will resume working on the radio. Quit. And it's done! Bang! Actually, the reason I wasn't able to film hardly anything on this episode was because my phone broke. I kind of had a bad week. My cat is very ill. We're going to go pick her up probably about an hour or so. She is actually having a hard time even using the bathroom. So I think we've got maybe another week or so with her. Anyway, this one's done. I restored it. Turned out really nice. So now that that's done, it's time to move on to another radio. As you might have imagined, yes, this is another exciting episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios from the 1920s through the 1960s or so, and sometimes a television or something else comes along the way. And we have here a very typical all-American 5 set. It is a model H-750T5. It appears that it came in several different color combinations: charcoal white, vermilion white, white ivory. And so of course I got the most boring one, the white ivory. To me it just looks white. It's interesting, it's got this tone control, voice or music. I'm assuming that probably just has like a capacitor stuck in there somewhere to increase or decrease the bass. I don't know what its working value is. Someone commented in the last video that I did that they'll never watch my videos again because I just turned the stuff on. Well, I know, you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to bring it up slowly on a variac. So just keep that in mind. We're going to give this a test to see what happens, if anything. See if I can see any. I can't really see into this case. I can't see if there's glowing filaments. It should be on by now. So that indicates... Oh wait, I hear something now.
Okay, yeah, he's glasses. Yeah, like, yeah.
Actually, it works pretty well. Took a long time to warm up. Sometimes not unusual. I can tell by looking through, and also by the style, that this is obviously a PCB board set. And I'm not a huge fan of Westinghouse radios. They tend to be on the cheaper end. But I'm not going to power it up anymore. I'm going to take it apart and see what's going on underneath the hood here. Here is the innards, and I can tell right away that it's all original. I mean, when I say original, I mean it's original. We have all of the tubes with the exact same style coloring of graphics printed on them. And, you know, most of the time when people replace tubes, it would be a different era, different brand, or even if it was the same brand, the brand would have changed their graphics from year to year. So I don't think anyone's ever changed the tubes in it. It's a very, very typical All-American 5. We have a 35 W4 for the rectifier, a 50 C5 for the output. We have a triode up there, a 12 AV6, and then of course the IFRF related 12 BA6, 12 BE6. One of those is probably the first audio. It's actually got kind of a little bit bigger than average speaker. Most of these have like a little 4 1/4 inch speaker. This looks to be a 5, and it's got a little bit bigger magnet. I mean, it's not like it's balls to the wall amazing, but it's better than the most AA5 sets, which were more made for, you know, just listening to the news. We have a electrolytic capacitor here with 2 values inside, and they are 2 50 microfarad caps rated. These are always rated at 150 volts. We have the oh so important across the line cap here. This is it says a Pyramid brand, and it's got a single colored stripe. Most of the time when you have a single colored Bumblebee style cap, it's going to be a plastic film versus a paper film cap, and those are generally okay. But this should be replaced anyway because it's the improper type of capacitor that would go for today's safety standards. We need to put an across the line safety cap here. Other than that, there's not much going on. We have this big wafer thingamabob up here that has probably a number of things inside of it, and those hardly ever go bad, and neither does that yellowish thing. That's a ceramic cap. So there's really, as far as the recap job, there's a total of 3 parts to replace here. So not a lot of expenditure needed to get this back up, and even though it's already going, to recap it. Sure enough, here is the switch for the tone control, and all it's doing here is we either put in or take out this little capacitor, 0.001. So that probably dampens down the bass. So if you want to listen to spoken word or, you know, the news or whatever, you don't get the bass that can make the, you know, voices a little more difficult to listen to. It's pretty gimmicky. Looks like the speaker's held in with these little squishy rubber things, even though they're kind of hardened. I'll probably have to take all this off because I'll need to find a way to clean this, even though it's not bad. I'm also going to try to decide whether or not I should paint the back of this, because I wouldn't paint the front. It's white, but this is such a boring color, and it's kind of a cool design. It'd probably really benefit from having a more interesting color. Right now is not ideal painting period. We were having a little bit of a cold spell. It's getting down in the 50s. And I usually like it to be at least 65 or 70 before I paint anything. So to remove this capacitor is going to require using a tool that I've shown many times on this show. It's called a solder sucker. It's basically a spring-loaded device that when you push the button, there's a plunger inside that pops up and the solder gets pulled off of the leads. And looking underneath here, we have, well, these three for sure, but there's probably also some lugs that are attaching. That one lug is just sitting there. It's not attached to anything, but we have this one and one in the back. That's not attached to anything either. It looks like it's literally only these three. Sometimes you have 4 or 5 lugs, including the ground and the other lugs on the electrolytic attached, but this is going to be pretty easy. We've got 150 here, 150 there, common shared ground. Sometimes you have to run a jumper if the can itself is being used as kind of a bridge for other grounds in the set. I'll have to look up what year this is. It's probably a later model. The material of the phenolic is much thicker, and the leads, they don't have the telltale sign of having been damaged by heat. Or it could be that this set just wasn't used a whole lot, which is possible since, again, we're firing on all of the original tubes, which is kind of unusual. You could expect maybe, I don't know, 3,000 to 5,000 hours before a tube would go bad, which, come to think of it, it'd only take a few years to do that. So I'll shut up and we'll get on with removing this solder. All right, so I'm going to attempt to film this using my little camera holder. I had one person who was watching my last episode and they were like really upset that I was not using something like this. Apologies for that. So what you want to do, and I just turned my soldering iron, it's going to take just a minute to warm up, is you want to really get the solder here really, really hot and molten. So you see how it's starting to melt? Then we'll get our solder sucker in here, pull it away, and you'll have little chunks of solder that come falling out of your solder sucker here. See? What did I tell ya? See? All right. Just go around and like do it to all 3 of the lugs. You kind of want to get as much as you can out of there. It's tempting for some people to try to yank the electrolytic out of there, but if you damage or crack this board, first of all, the board itself is acting kind of as a structural element for the entire thing, so that would not be a good thing. Just take your time, be patient. Now, since we've pulled away quite a bit of it, the next thing I'm going to do is snip some of these lugs. Yeah. Time to get out my more beefy snippers. And if you don't wear glasses like me, you need to make sure and wear some goggles when you do this, because when you do this, you're going to have crap flying around in the air. Alright, so again, we'll continue going in, removing more and more and more solder. Just going to really clean that out. Oh, come on. There. There's bigger ones of these. I think there's a famous blue plastic one called Sol to Put. I personally can't stand those. They're too big. So now what you do is you gently get your little remnants of tabs loose and just gently start wiggling. See if it's going to come loose at all. It is kind of coming loose. Oh, come on now. Like I said, be patient. Just kind of work it till it generally slowly starts to come loose. See if there's anything else holding this in. No, there's not much. It's just this thing. Ah, there we go. We pulled it out. You know, this can didn't look too bad. It's not swollen up or anything. Usually when they start to go bad, this right here, which is the relief vent, usually you'll start seeing a little bit of bulging. It's fine. Nothing wrong with it. But I just replace it anyway. Anything that gets to be this old should be viewed with suspicion. So now what are we going to do is replace the capacitors, the two capacitors that were in that can, with two modern electrolytic capacitors. And it's going to be these guys. We have two 47 microfarad rated electrolytic capacitors. And just to get my bearings to make sure again, the two positives are here, the negative is there. So it's literally going to be these two holes and the one in the back for the common negative. And that would look something like this. Just separate the leads and just kind of snug them in there. There. And you just solder the leads on the bottom. What I do is I bend the leads out of the way, kind of cinch it up, and we will proceed to solder those in. So we'll do the negative. Make sure, and kind of a big mistake that some people who are, you know, just beginning this hobby, they won't get their solder hot enough. And you just want to kind of fill these areas in. This is a little bit of a bigger hole here. There we go. And just to clean everything up, you want to snip these leads off. Make sure nothing critical is touching, which it's not. And they're good to go. We have like two nice, shiny new modern electrolytics. All right, so now I've installed the safety cap. This is an X2, Y2 across the line safety cap. Guaranteed to split open if it gets whacked, and that's important. Because on a hot chassis set, you don't want a capacitor like that to fuse. That would be pretty chaotic. The last thing I'm going to do is kind of in the general recap job. I want to clean this up a little bit. I'm going to clean the tubes, clean their sockets, maybe dust the board, clean the volume pot. And then we'll also lubricate the bearings for the tuning condenser. And then we'll give it a test to make sure we're still firing on all cylinders, which I suspect we probably will. And possibly move on to the case. Like I said, I need to go pick up my cat from the vet. So this might have to be resumed tomorrow or something. We'll see. All right, so we cleaned it all up and everything. So now I'm going to... I don't know, I'm making that noise. Oil the little bearing here. There's one in the front and one in the back. It's about as simple as they get. There's no dowel string or anything. Just work it back and forth. That's already starting to turn a lot easier. Just makes it nicer, makes it feel nicer. Likewise, we need to clean this volume pot. And the way you do that is you get some contact cleaner. First you get some back into the switch area, so that works a little easier. This one's not easy to get at. It's hard to film this actually, but the underside of the pot is facing downward with the legs. It's got some of that in there. Work it in. So, now it is time to plug it in and still make sure that we have radioage. All right, the big question, will it work? It's really bad when you work on something that worked and then it stops working. I've had that happen way too many times. Yeah, this is a slow guy as far as the warm-up goes. Seems like that rectifier's taking an awfully long time to get up to full filament brightness. Might have to replace that guy. All right.
See that they knock it off, you can kick his ass. But if he takes his watch off, you got problems. that
Francisco's African American.
866. The father, son.
Sins be wiped away.
Y ahora quieres traer a otro conditions. Help in claim process.
So log on to visitorplans.com or call 855-5-VISITOR.
Pretty sensitive little set. It picks up all the local Indian, Hispanic, and Chinese language local stations. Sometimes those are hard to pick up around here for some reason. But I think I'm going to replace that rectifier. I mean, it's probably going to test good, but again, it seemed like it took forever for the filament voltage to, or the filament to bring it up to full. And it just so happens that someone dropped off a whole crap ton of new old stock tubes the other day. There we go. New old stock Sylvania, come on gather, 35W4s. All the guys at the museum know I work on an awful lot of these AA5s, so anytime the AA5 tubes come in, have them grab them for me. Alright, just for shits and giggles. See what this does. You know, probably help if I plugged in. Unplugged there. Stupid. Alright. There she goes.
नापनी चाहिए मेरा ना एक फोटोशूट चल रहा था और उसमें मैं थोड़ी कॉन्शियस हो रही थी तो उस फोटोग्राफर ने बोला कि मैंने पतली से पतली और
如果唔好彩發生咗車禍，立即保障你嘅。To renounce one.
Seems to work a little better. If I weren't so lazy, I would just check all these tubes, but it seems like it's really sensitive. You couldn't ask for better performance. I do need to clean this contact here. But electrically, as far as a AM radio, it's in very good electronic shape now. It should provide additional years of reliable service. But we're not done here, as you know. For you that watch my channel, I'm not going to just have an AM radio because there's nothing to listen to much around here anyway. So it's going to get an additional feature, which is an audio input feature. But I'm done with electronics for the night. I think I'm going to take at least the case, the back part of the case, over to the sink and clean it up. So that can be cleaned up and drying. And depending on the weather, This might have to wait for a few days. It's supposed to warm up this weekend. That's when I might do the paint job on the back. All right, so now I'm going to clean the front of this thing. And at first I thought, well, maybe I can move all the crap off of it so I can clean it. You don't have to do that. You can just use a little, I save all my old toothbrushes. Get a little warm water and some simple green solution. I'm not sure if they sell simple green in other places besides the US, but they don't. It's just kind of a mild, I'm not sure you should call it, a mild detergent slash degreaser. And it's non-toxic, which I kind of like. You want to be kind of easy around some of this foil stuff or whatever this chrome plating is. So I'm just getting in there and getting all these little nooks and crannies, and I don't want to get it soaking wet. I'm sure the speaker might get sprayed with a little bit of stuff, but it won't hurt it. You just go around the whole thing and use a paper towel to blot it. And the idea is eventually you go over it several times and wipe it off in between, and that'll eventually clean it up. Okay, well, I'm going to attempt to... hey, George. It's my other little kitty. She looks like a classic Halloween cat. Anyway, I'm going to paint this case, and I decided to take some advice from one of the commentators on this video channel. They said, you know, if it's a cooler day, if you want the paint to cure a little bit better and run, you know, smoother, try warming up the paint in warm water first. So I took my wife's cake pan, turned it upside down, filled it with warm water. I didn't know what color I wanted to paint it. I have a lot of blue painted radios right now, so I need to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I think I'm going to paint it this kind of nice, rich colonial red color. I find this Rust-Oleum double coat stuff works pretty well. Seems to work pretty well in plastic. What I also did is I cleaned the cabinet, or the back of the cabinet, with well, soap and water, and then I went over it with rubbing alcohol. That gets all the fingerprints and grease and whatever, and makes sure that the paint's going to adhere. I've never done this before, and I'm not sure well it's going to work. It could end in abject failure, but we'll see. All right, here we go. It's actually a pretty warm day, so I might be doing okay here. We'll see. I'm not going to film it painting because it requires my concentration. Well, I have to say, thank you, whoever made that recommendation about preheating my cans. Now, of course, we don't need to paint the inside because that'll be all sealed up. But it's important to get the edges because if it closes up, and I can't remember how this does, there's a potential you might see that edge. Yeah, that turned out pretty well. I'm going to leave it alone, let it cure out here. Probably in a couple hours I'll come out and set it off with this so it doesn't precariously blow off. That's why I put the rocks in there. Maybe someday I'll get a real spray booth. I don't know. Alright, well that turned out pretty good. I know it's kind of hard to see since red is so intense. But we've got probably a couple more hours of sunlight out here. Paint is already cured pretty well, but I want to make sure it cures mo better. In the meantime, it's time to go back in and work more on the chassis. Stupid pigeons. What they do is they come and shit all over all of our cars. So what I have is a water gun that I keep in reserve here. Alright, pigeons. It's time to say your prayers. Sometimes they fly away because they know that I mean business. I'm not sure if I can film this, but... Alright, enough of the stupid pigeon war. I worked on this a little bit last night. Got most of the dirt out here. There's a little bit around this logo here, and since I got a new paint job I want to make sure this looks perfect. Meanwhile, I'm soaking the knobs in a little bit of warm water and simple green. Got to be careful about using real strong chemicals when it comes to things like when you have white printed letters. You'll take the paint right off and you'll lose all that. But again, I just want to come in here and just pick away at the dirt. And eventually, make it look spotless. It's going to be a little time consuming, but take your time. In the end, all those little details, to, physical appearance can make all the difference. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just another shitty run-of-the-mill All-American 5 radio that was made by the millions and millions and millions and millions. But it has got kind of a cool looking style going on to it, and so might as well make it look as good as you possibly can. I don't think this was a smoker's radio. A lot of these things that I got in, if it's a smoker's radio, the plastic would be all kind of yellow and gross and grungy looking. Doesn't seem like that's the case here. Quite nice condition, actually. By the way, my cat's doing a lot better today. She's actually eating again. And, I mean, I know that the end is inevitably near, but she seems to be having a good day. When she's having a good day, I have a better day. Even though the stuff that's happening globally is rather depressing and alarming. But let's not go there. Working on a radio. Get away from geopolitics for just a little bit. Alright, well, I'm going to clean this up, dry it up a little bit, and then we're going to turn this around and start working on adding the oh-so-famous audio input feature that I feature a lot on this channel. So now let's install the isolation transformer. Actually, let me back that up. I'm going to install the audio feature, and the idea is that we will be able to run a 3.5 millimeter jack. This will be our incoming audio from a Bluetooth device or a phone or whatever. And that will go through the audio section of the set. We're going to use the amplification part of the circuit to have our sound go through. And how we're going to do that is we're going to run it through the volume control, which is this guy here. And it has 3 legs. It's hard to film from above. They're back, well, they're kind of in the front here behind that first stand. Underneath, they are these 3 legs. There's a top and a bottom, the bottom being the negative, and this is pretty easy to determine because this leg goes to the common negative 4B+, so naturally, by process of elimination, it's this leg that goes to the basically incoming radio signal. Now, what we need to do is make a little slice here. We're going to add a little switch. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you turn the radio on and run your audio through, the radio signal is going to pollute your audio. Vice versa, if you want to listen to the radio, you need to be able to switch that capability back on. So that entails using an isolation transformer. All it is, it's just a transformer that has a 120 volt incoming primary, which is this side, outgoing 12 volt secondary. Primary goes to either the end of the volume control, which is the top and the bottom, as I just pointed out. The secondary will be our incoming audio. And what we'll need to do with the incoming audio, because everything is in stereo now, we need to make sure and tie the right and the left channels together. So we have these 2 resistors. I think they're in their 90 something ohms. Usually I use 100, but I ran out of those. Tie two ends together, right, left channel. These 2 get twisted together. They go on one side of the secondary, in the secondary side of the transformer. Then what we need to do is run a resistor that is approximately half the value of the volume pot's resistance and in series with a 0.02 rated cap. The voltage can be minimal. 50 volts is fine. And we put these end to end, and the reason is because a lot of these sets have an automatic gain control feature, and the transformers can sometimes interfere with that when the radio is in receiving mode. You don't want to mess up the radio signal. So this kind of puts a little shunt in there, prevents that from happening. And what I'm going to do is I always look for a place that's closest to the volume pot. This one's easy. This can be glued right here. We run leads. Probably going to go underneath here this way and to these 3 leads here. Easy. Everything's pretty easy to get at. So I'll do that, and I'll show you what that looks like once that is completed. Alright, so we got the system installed. This is the underside look. We have our bottom of the pot line and our top of the pot line and our switch wire that will come out of the back of the set. I make these unnecessarily long, so I'm not sure how much length I need in this. I've got like 10,000 feet of this on a coil. Likewise, on the top is our isolation transformer with our right and left channels terminating to one end, and our .02 rated cap and our... Damn it, I forgot to put that resistor in there, but maybe it'll work without it. Sometimes it will. Anyway, I'm going to put the rectifier tube back in there and temporarily patch in a cable, because what I'm going to have to do is drill a hole at the back of the case for both the switch wire and the outcoming audio cable. I don't quite want to do that yet. I want to make sure this works before I do that. Sometimes what happens is that this acts like a big antenna. I mean, usually it'll go away when you clip it down, because usually I'm only going to have like that much probably. Sometimes it makes an awful noise. So before final reassembly, I want to make sure that functionally this is going to work. Alright, well, it seems to be working pretty good. Actually, it sounds pretty good. Alright, well, I'll take that. I think it's time to do final reassembly. That means like very gingerly drilling a hole in the back of the still somewhat freshly painted back. And we'll put a switch on that wire that's coming out of the back. Like this deal-in-my-bob here. And see how it looks when we put it back together again. Hooray! Alright, got it all put back together again, and I'm pretty pleased with how this paint job turned out. It looks pretty slick. Like how I'd want it to look maybe from the factory. Front and back. I did polish these knobs a little bit, but she sounded good.
Some days I just go drifting back and think of better times.
That barely makes a difference in the audio. Whatever, it's kind of gimmicky.
On how you used to love me. Somehow.
Can't play more than that, because what'll happen is Google will pick it up and be like, violated copyrights. Not really. You're allowed to play, I think, like 10 seconds of it or something. Anyway, this is another radio that started out kind of doldrummy, boring looking, and just adding this little splash of color here, I think really kind of brings it up and makes it certainly look a lot better than if I just left it the plain old boring white color. Then again, some people would disagree with me, which is fine. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this episode of Radiorama. If you have any questions or comments, of course, you can always leave them in the comments section below. If you like this channel, make sure and press that like button. And until the next time that a piece of vintage, worn out / obsolete piece of electronic gear comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.